Hi, everyone. It is Talkback. It's Friday, February 16th, 2024. There is so much going on in the world today. We have got to talk about it. My goodness, from international affairs to America struggling with its elections coming up in November to gun violence to trials. I mean, is there anything that we have to not talk about today? I have the perfect panel to discuss with us, our political pundits. What are they saying? What is happening? Let me introduce the three people, the pundits of Talkback. They are Karen Melkonian from Boston. Hi. Shannon Loudon from Andover, Connecticut. And Greg Loudon from Berkeley, California. We have a nice, and I'm here sitting in Colchester on the Comcast network out of Norwich, Connecticut. So I want to ask them, what is the number one thing? And I only want one phrase because we're going to talk a lot. The number one thing we have to worry of all the problems going on in the world. Shannon, give me one phrase.
Climate change.
All right, Greg, give me one phrase.
Climate crisis.
Oh, wow. And Karen, one
Donald Trump.
phrase. All right. So it's interesting. Two people said climate change, and those weren't the things that were immediately on my mind today. I turned the TV on. We're waiting for this result from the stupid Trump trial. And I want to start with this. We've had a lot of talk about NATO and Ukraine and the fact that we are struggling in this Congress to get aid to Ukraine. And so the question is, what happened today in Russia? Perhaps he was in Siberia in a prison cell. Alexei Navalny is dead. Alexei Navalny is dead. This is a man who fought against Putin's tyranny for years. He was poisoned. He fled to Germany. He was in a coma. When he got out of the coma, instead of seeking more freedom for himself and his family, he went right back to Russia where he said he belonged. I need you to talk about this, how this affects the world, how this affects the United States today. Shannon.
Well, I'll defer to others. I knew that Navalny died as of today. I know we're waiting for confirmation, but as far as we know, he is in fact dead. So I'll leave it to the world politics guru, my brother, Gregory, to talk first about this, and we'll see if I have any commentary, Sheila. Thanks.
Okay. Karen.
I was going to let Greg go first.
Okay, Greg.
I think it's a sad day that Navalny was the sort of figurehead of any opposition to Putin that was not from a personal power place in Russia. That at least he seemed to have a sense of a broader good for the Russian people and for the Russian state than pretty much any other potential challenger to Putin has. Most of the other challengers to Putin would be of the same mold, just different kinds of oligarchs. Navalny was not that. And it is going to take it. Basically, it would say he was the only potential quote unquote liberal challenger to Putin that really had any international and national recognition. So if we are expecting internal change in Russia, that internal change is much more fraught right now than it has been in the past.
All right. And we've been hearing about how the Republican Party, via Trump and via Tucker Carlson, who was in Russia in the last few weeks and even interviewed Putin, we were hearing how they have become comrades of Russia and against Ukraine. Do you think this will make any difference and any change, Karen, in getting us the passage of aid to Ukraine that President Biden, the Democrats, and some Republicans want?
Well, interesting. Um, just to follow up on Greg, was that it's not going to change a thing because nothing moves the needle. When I said the biggest concern for me is Donald Trump, that we keep thinking things will move the needle. That this person who fought for democracy, who may have been killed, that would be a wake up call. But nothing wakes these people up because they're in the hold of Donald Trump. And so I don't think this will move the needle at all in terms of our releasing aid to Ukraine. I think that these people are that nothing will move the needle so long as Donald Trump is their chairman, their cult leader, their thought provoker, whatever he is, mind controller.
Okay, interesting.
I think it's very sad for that reason.
So it's also interesting that I prepared a PowerPoint, which Greg has on his computer, of phones that help lead us into a discussion of different topics. And I'm thinking, I do not think that climate change was one of the subjects of the PowerPoint. So before we get to the political cartoons as a way to get into discussing some of the issues, I would like both Shannon and Greg to talk for a minute about why we're not doing enough about climate change and why it is the existential threat to the world today. Shannon?
We were talking about this, Sheila, before you were able to join us with your computer issues. And again, I'll defer to Gregory because he is way more versed in this than I am. But I think it is, I agree with his characterization or his phrase, crisis. And that if we don't start to address it immediately, we're going to see probably war break out as a result of it. We only seem to pay attention to what's going on in the United States. And certainly Gregory, being out in California, has experienced some of the worst of it with the drought that was out there, the resulting fires and whatnot. But if we don't start to pay attention to it globally, we're going to see war and a whole different multi-million person need to address a refugee issue that we were discussing earlier.
Okay, Greg.
Well, Sheila, what I was talking about was some of the scariest news that you see doesn't make it past the noise of Donald Trump and the current political climate. But one of the scariest things is there's an ongoing drought in northern India because the Himalayan snowpack is not what it normally is. And when you think of how many people live and are dependent on that water, those people aren't going to be able to stay where they are. And that is happening throughout the world, that places are becoming uninhabitable. They're becoming unfarmable. Subsistence agriculture is becoming untenable. And one of the reasons for the mass migratory movements we're starting to see is people can't live where they have traditionally lived. And that sort of underlies a lot of the tension in the world today, I think. You see it in the right-wing nationalist spread throughout the world, the spread of right-wing nationalism throughout the world, that almost all of it has a very strong anti-migrant basis. They're saying, that people are saying, we don't want these people in our country. Well, the problem is those people can't survive where they're currently living.
So it's interesting, in the Trump administration, he got out of all of the climate discussions, and Biden has brought us back into it. But Greg, do you think he's brought us back into it enough? And there was a climate change package that was passed by the Congress in the last few years. Is that enough? What more do we need? And why are we so behind the eight ball?
I think, one of the largest things for me is, purely the financial and economic might of extractive industry. Essentially, one of the things that has been the strangest in the entire Biden administration is that they've been touting the record U.S. production of fossil fuel for the last 2 years, that we are more energy independent. Well, we've achieved that energy independence by pumping more fossil fuels out of the ground than we ever have in the past. And that is scary to me, that that's considered a positive. But the problem is we've had a multi-billion dollar industry spend 60 years disguising and obfuscating the fact that their product causes the climate to shift, and they're living on their investment at this point. They've invested in political parties, they've invested in think tanks, they've invested in an entire ecosystem that basically says we can't address the climate change issue, the climate crisis issue, in a systematic fashion for whatever reason, because the way to address it would be to stop them from doing their sales, to stop their industry. And that's an existential threat to them. I mean, one of the things that I've thought about is that the other big thing is that, a large part of the world financial system is based on the supposed value of all of that oil and all of that coal that's still in the ground. So they get there's a lot of financial stake in that value staying constant. Basically, if we effectively address the climate crisis, that stuff would become almost worthless. And that they're not willing to let that happen.
Right.
I think it's interesting, Sheila, to get this is Shannon. I don't know. There we go. Just to bring it back around to the Biden administration, and as far as their priorities and whatnot, I think it's interesting. We had Kerry as the climate change. I don't know if he was an ambassador or cabinet member, special envoy, and it just shows kind of how they have made tremendous strides, no doubt about it, much greater than happened in the previous 4 years. But we had Kerry as a special envoy, and all of a sudden he no longer is in that position, but is now part of the Biden campaign for the presidential election this coming November. Was that really the most appropriate thing to do, to recognize or to continue to follow through to say how important the climate crisis is for addressing by the Biden administration?
Well, Shannon, I wanted to say, can I pipe in?
Go ahead.
So I'm going to go back to what I said at the very beginning, which is the only way that we're going to get involved and help this is if these acolytes are gone. And so to some degree, yes, I do think probably that is a good use of John Kerry, because if this administration, if we get a different administration under Trump, I think we're done. They want to remove all regulations. Obviously, we saw that. They want to promote a denial of climate change to people who want to believe, that everything is done to, hurt them. And so again, I have to go back to I think we need all hands on deck to not let this man be elected president, because it will worsen everything we do, from climate change, et cetera. And not to mention that Neil Gorsuch, has some involvement, with his mother and does not believe in the EPA, et cetera, or any independent regulatory agencies. So that's a problem too. But I still strongly believe that we need to go from the top. Biden may not be perfect, but he is not a denier. And I do think John Kerry, we need to share with the world. And if campaigning will help that and help us not get a denier into the office, we are in better shape.
All right. So a couple of things. I have read that we are now, Greg, producing more oil and exporting than any other country in the world. But the Biden administration doesn't want to talk about that too much, because their effort is to try and electrify vehicles and try to get us out of the fossil fuel world. But we're in it. And if you notice, when Trump said he wants to be a dictator on day one, the thing that he wants to do first is pump, 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 if you heard him. But I agree with Karen. I think they have named a successor to Kerry. I think he used to be the mayor of New Orleans. I don't remember his name, but there is a successor that has been named. And I think, again, we have a binary choice in November. And if we think that is the greatest existential at the moment, to this country is perhaps getting Trump again, then that's what we have to talk about. Too many people, and I've heard this expression, are sleepwalking into authoritarianism because too many people don't believe that we can get a dictatorship or an authoritarian, that our democracy is so strong that even Trump can't break it. But that may not be true. So let's go to the cartoons. And Greg, I'm going to ask you to put them on the screen. And of course, the very first group, let's take a look at the first one and move. Again, it's all about, of course, Trump. Is he wearing the above the law crown? We see these cases going on now, these trials, things are happening in Georgia. Things are before the Supreme Court on the January 6th case. We're worried about the judge in the documents case, that she is not working hard enough to get the case up and running, that she perhaps has a bias toward Trump. We're embroiled in all of that, and he just moves along. Go to the next slide, Greg, and then we'll have you each talk about it. And again, this is, I don't care what Donald Trump claims. You don't have immunity for your bad behavior. So this, this man has normalized awful behavior, and it is so awful that we just we slough it off when the 1/10 of the things that he has done, if Biden or Obama or anyone else had done 1/10 of it, they would have resigned, I guess, in shame, in disgrace, or whatever. Just go to the next one and then we'll talk, because they're all about that. Again, you take a trial. The decision in this case, in the fraud case in New York, is due to come in actually today by Judge Engoron. But he has to contend with bomb squads and threats to his safety and the safety of the other people who work in the courts. Because if Donald Trump is against you, his MAGAs are going to come after you and threaten your life. Go to the next one. There again, what happened to the old witness stand? There he is. The rules of interrogation, the rules of evidence, Shannon and Karen, and as a lawyer, do they apply to him? Does he get to say whatever he wants without any consequences? All right, just one more and then we'll have you talk. What is this one? Oh, yeah, he could have prevented the Civil War by negotiating. I mean, there isn't any stupid, irrational, ignorant thing he says that ever gets castigated by, I don't know, by anyone. All right, who wants to go first? Karen, you go first.
Well, I was going to say, what I realize is that our laws that we have in place are not strong enough to address a sociopath. And basically, so he does get away with it because there's always some out. No one can really go to the next level. My other thing is I think people are always too worried, and they they do something different for him to make sure that they do the full, Megillah, that nothing is lost on the table. And that's what generally creates problems. He should just be treated like everybody else. They should do the right thing and go on. And the other thing I find particularly appalling, whatever anyone thinks of whether Fani Willis should or should not have had an affair with her other DA, whatever that is, I think it's particularly appalling that this trial has her sex life basically on display, that this is okay. And this man, Donald Trump, has been found to either rape or have sexually assaulted a woman and owes $83 million. And yet here we are in Georgia having this woman's sex life, and that's what it is. They are creating. I mean, that thing is a ruckus. It's a circus. And frankly, it's appalling that we're doing that because he somehow found this. Whatever we think of what she did, again, the hypocrisy. I also think that the MAGA people have lost, they somehow lost the gene for understanding hypocrisy, like it may be a genetic problem. Because whenever you say any of this, everything is such a it's so hypocritical. And yet they don't see it. And we keep going as if we have to do something different for him, because we can't let him get an in. But every time we do, we actually do something that is wrong. So I'm really thoroughly appalled. And the first one said, what else could we give to this man, whatever that first one was? And I'm going to say we need to give him a Givenchy or somebody designer cell in a jail somewhere with whatever he needs. And that's really all that he doesn't have. But essentially, yes, this man gets away with absolutely everything because he has enough people who are cultish. He's a cult leader who will do whatever he says and whatever he wants, and a mafia boss. And here we are. And we're wasting our time on a trial of the sex life of a Georgia DA. It's ridiculous.
All right, Shannon.
Well, I agree with Karen how appalling it is, the hypocrisy of all of it. I think the thing that concerned me the most with all that has gone on is what you were talking about in the other slide with Ngoran. The fact that an indicted criminal who has yet to be in front of a jury can brazenly flout all of the rules that have been established and all of the potential sanctions that have been put in place simply by stepping outside the courtroom and saying whatever he wishes outside of the courtroom instead of inside of the courtroom is incredible to me. The other thing that I wanted to comment on is something that I feel, which is anytime anybody speaks against Trump, not even poorly about him, but it's in any way that's to challenge him, they have to be concerned for their lives. The fact that Ngoran and all of the staff, it was just amazing to me, and very troubling to me, I should say, the messages that were received and recorded to what happened when Ngoran and his staff, the fear that is created by Trump's followers. I don't even feel comfortable putting a bumper sticker onto my car that says Biden Harris or whatnot, for fear that it's going to be vandalized or whatnot. So that's really the troubling thing to me. Not only is he seemingly above the law with 91 counts against him and 4 separate criminal trials going against him, but the fact that he brazenly continues to encourage much in the way he did the January 6th insurrection, something that then creates fear in much of the rest of us.
Yeah, I think that the tyranny of fear that he has created and has slipped away from, because he always says something like, "Oh, well, they say that," he never takes ownership. It's always someone else suggesting, and so it's hard to pin him down when one of his followers commits a crime, takes a gun, makes a threat. And the other thing that I worry about is, even if we do get 1 or maybe 2 decisions on these trials before the November election, they're still going to be in appeal. You know that, Shannon, Karen, that they're going to be on appeal, and they're not going to be decisions on the appeals are not going to be made before November. So this is another something that's very troubling, and he uses every court appearance as a political appearance. And he's mixing politics with what goes on in the courtroom. And most people don't have the time to sit and watch or listen to what happens in a court. The kind of boring need to follow the rules and put things into evidence properly and so forth. Most people aren't aware of that and will take at face value how he describes what's going on. So let's move on, because Greg, did you want to say something on this topic?
2 very quick things. One is Trump gives very strong support to the idea of stochastic terrorism, which is basically, if you say something to a large group of people to encourage violence, someone in that large group will take you up on it. And that's what we're facing a lot of the time. The second thing is the most pithy summary of modern conservatism in the United States and maybe worldwide that I've heard, is that modern conservatism consists of the proposition that there is an in-group that the law protects but does not bind, and an out-group that the law binds but does not protect. And that is the essence of modern conservatism, and Trump is the exemplar of that.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next slides and see what they portend. Oh, again, throw in another indictment on the fire. This is part of his political campaign. Go on to the next one. January 6th was simply a party with patriotic Americans enjoying their bounce house. And of course, that's the narrative that some of the Republicans want you to believe. All right, go on. Oh, yes. And our new House Speaker, I've blurred out some Capitol rioters from the January 6th video footage because when it comes to facts and truth about that day, I want to be crystal blurry. He's amazing. Go on. We'll talk about him in a second. Oath breakers, there they are, with Trump, the insurrectionists, and he has no qualms about breaking them out of jail, I guess, pardoning them. Go on. Next one. All right. So here it is. Go to the last one. He just might do it. Kill our democracy. Burn it up. And I think that's the thing that many of us are saying is going to happen. But again, as I use that expression, is most of the country ignoring it, saying, oh, come on, he's terrible, but he's not, he's nothing bad's going to happen. We'll just go on with our lives and he'll be bad. But what do you think? Is our democracy in the balance? Karen?
Yes. And I think it's, I'm not sure if how much people are ignoring or selectively hearing. For example, I think I told you, Shelley, I was sitting next to somebody that's who I don't know, but I heard her say, well, I'm not going to vote for either because, one is as bad as the next. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, Biden didn't protect our abortion rights and he promised, and he's committing genocide. And I said, And I said, have you thought about, my bubble thought was, well, we live in Massachusetts, but I said, well, have you thought about what might happen, let's say, if either the other one gets elected president? Like, do you know what might be the result of that? Like, have you balanced that? No, they're both bad. So what I took away from that was they have sound bites. The sound bite, that abortion was a sound bite from somewhere because that he promised us our abortion rights. I don't know where that comes from. And Joe Biden himself is committing genocide. I understand what they're saying, but it's a very narrow view of an entire world. It's also an uneducated view of, or a lack of education and understanding what, like the three branches of government, what each one of them does, what happens when you're president, and what their actual policies are. Instead, they focus, there's a youth and they get a sound bite. They focus on the sound bite. And I think that is going to be the end of us. We're never going to convince the Michael, whatever his, Johnson, whatever the right MAGAs of anything different. They're in a cult. But the youth and other people who are hearing one soundbite somewhere and don't have a vision of the totality, you cannot like a policy, but you shouldn't just stay home because there's one thing this president's doing you might not like. And that is a very scary message. And I suspect it's TikTok, and I've looked at it. It's Instagram and it's sound bites, and that's what people can hear. And it's that I feel like we need to go out and do something and educate people. That's, I think, the only way out of this.
All right, let's go on to a couple more slides, and we'll hear from Shannon and Greg. What's the next? Remember how people went ballistic when Obama wore a tan suit? All right, go on again. So much for my fantasy picks, Biden, Trump rematch. All right, go on. Okay, here we get to, so I want Shannon and Greg talk about this. The idea that so many people in the country are just fed up. They have terrible choices. It's Trump or Biden. Oh, they're both horrible. Biden's too old. This is a snoozer. Shannon, how do we disabuse people of that and say this is a binary choice and that's it? You have no other choice if you want to save the democracy.
Well, I agree that democracy is in the balance and certainly is on the ballot this November. We just have to, and I don't know how to bring this about, Sheila. It's been a very frustrating part of our news cycle that I think Karen was referring to. It's amazing to me how much noise, and again, we're doing it again today, and that's not to say that we shouldn't be, but how much bandwidth Trump takes up of everything. We don't get to focus on all of the tremendous things that the Biden administration has done, the pieces of legislation, major legislation that's been passed. So, as far as dealing with the sleeper mentality with regard to November, there's got to be something that wakes people up, and I think it gets down to the media, waking people up as to the critical nature of our democracy being on the ballot in November. I as far as Biden versus Trump and the ageism and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the bottom line is he will be our nominee. There's no one else who has stepped up to the plate. There's no one else who was in the batter's box, so to speak. He, in fact, will be the nominee, and we absolutely must get behind him and support him. It's incredible to me the fact that, and again, getting back to just how much the media doesn't take on Trump, or the mainstream media, I should say, the media that most Americans will pay attention to, which is in sound bites and whatnot. But amazing to me that a candidate for president is now going to go under the first criminal trial as of March 25th and can still be considered a candidate to be the president of the United States. Incredibly troubling, and I don't know the answer other than the absolute need, simply doing the campaign work that we all do and getting out the vote and registering voters. It's got to come down to an education, the basis for which, as far as I'm concerned, unfortunately doesn't now exist in our current media presentation, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it's also what we do as a country. In Brazil, they were worried about Bolsonaro. He lost the election. And then a few weeks later, after he went to Florida, they had an insurrection in the government buildings in Brasilia. And the country, they took to the streets to protest. And they passed a law that says he cannot run for president for a set number of years. Because immediately they said, we can't have that in this country. But in America, how many years is it now since 2020? Almost 4 years later, we're still dickering around with this thing. No trial yet, no final definitive answer. And he's parading around like our first slide, like a king.
All right, well, I think the thing that you talked about earlier and that I wanted to get back to is just from the legal perspective. I am very heartened that as of March 25th, he will finally be undergoing a trial. And that will affect his ability to be on the campaign trail. That trial is scheduled to last for 6 weeks. Unfortunately, it's probably the least sexy, so to speak, as far as coming across in the media, as far as the media wanting to cover it. But it will be the first time a former president of the United States, will be on trial in a criminal proceeding. Just incredible to me.
Yeah. Let's go to the next slides, and then Greg's turn to speak. Again, the same thing. Biden rematch, move over. We're all, depressed about it. Keep going. This is the debate. Biden will bring paper and Trump will bring a club. Remember the debate in 2020 when Biden couldn't get a word in edgewise and Trump kept talking over him? And finally, I think I heard Biden say, "Will you tell this guy to shut up?" And he wouldn't. Remember that? I think that. All right, go on to the next slide. All right, here it is. This is what you were saying, Shannon. People are not realizing all the good things that have happened under the Biden administration. Unemployment is historically low. Inflation is falling and gas prices are lower. See, Biden's too old. That's what they want to talk about. Greg, talk about that.
Well, I think first of all, I am coming to like another word rather than mainstream media. I like the word for-profit media because that gets behind their incentives. Their incentives are not to present accurate views of the world. Their incentives are to get clicks. Their incentives are to get advertising. Those incentives are out there and they're driving the media narrative. I mean, they want crisis. They want controversy. You know, if it bleeds, it leads. This is one of the scariest things I've read in the last week is literally Washington reporters having no compunction about saying, we don't like it because Joe Biden's boring. He's boringly competent and he doesn't give us entertainment. He doesn't give us crisis. And so, you know, what, and then when they say, well, why don't you present the good news that the unemployment is low, the economy is booming? And they're like, well, we're not yet Biden's PR department. And it's like, well, then what are you reporting on? I think, you know, in general, we have, you know, a dysfunctional media system. I think the other thing that I wanted to bring back a little bit was in terms of the threat to democracy, it's not just Trump. I mean, it's the entire installation of a 50-year project of, you know, whether it's the Federalist Society, whether it's the Powell Memo and, you know, the various organizations that grew up around that. This is the culmination of a project. Trump is the avatar of this project. He is not the entirety of it. What he is he is the actor at the front of, we want to get rid of essentially the Great Society, the New Deal. We want to roll things back to the 1890s, whether it's in women's rights and their control over their own health, whether it's corporate regulation, whether it's antitrust, which is a thing that no one ever talks about, which I think is huge, given grocery prices and the fact that in the northwestern United States, there is a merger that is about to happen where 90% of all of the groceries in the northwestern United States will be controlled by one company. You know, I mean, basically, no one talks about that, but this is the substrate on which Trump operates. We have set him there. There has been a systematic effort to set him up to destroy democracy. He may do it, but we don't talk about, we concentrate on the glitz and glamour like the media, or the what, as Shannon said, the sexy stuff or the crisis stuff, and we don't talk about the good stuff. Right. And I think, I don't know if there's a way around that given the way that our media is structured at this point.
But there is controversies about whether he can actually be a useful tool of the people you're talking about, or whether he is sui generis. In other words, he is on his own. And I'm reading that some of the big companies and the big money are not as enamored of him because they cannot control him, because he is so out of the box and so narcissistic and sociopathic and self-centered that he will not do their bidding. He will do his bidding every day, every moment, whatever is on his mind. Do you sense any of that?
Is this to me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think yes. I think very rich people would like a more stable, predictable pattern for what's going on, but they're also very rich. They can ride out most of the chaos. I mean, the fact is, you know, a lot of the billionaires in the United States have bought themselves citizenship in other countries, and they will go to those other countries if things get bad enough here. Whether it's Mark Zuckerberg building a bunker in Hawaii to ride out things, or Peter Thiel and Elon Musk having citizenship in New Zealand. They would prefer a more predictable chaos agent, but they'll go with the chaos agent they have.
Okay. All right, let's move on with the slides. Let's
Can I make one comment?
Yeah, all right.
Just, I was going to say, but it's also who, like you were talking before, just to merge the two topics about media. I mean, so what do we see? All we see are what he really is controlling, which is the Congress, the MAGA Congress. And so that's what's, so he does appear to have control of a lot of the levers, irrespective of those rich people. Once he gets control of the RNC and he's brainwashed, or whatever he's done there with the MAGA people in Congress. So I think, just to tie it up, Greg, those rich Koch brothers or whomever, we don't see that much about them. What we see is the Congress accolades, and that he has full control now of that whole Republican system.
That's true. And then the media, we think that the New York Times is a great publication, only the truth. But a lot of people are saying that they are going to use the Biden age issue the same way they
Emails
did the Hillary email.
Yep.
They played that to a fare thee well, when it was never as substantial a matter as the press and made it out to be. And then you got the Comey thing and all of that. And so we have a lot to argue with the New York Times, and as well as other newspapers. Let's go on with the slides a bit and see what's next. I'm not answering because I like to keep my current relationship. All right, keep going. People are not telling people who they're voting for. GOP House. All right. Impeach Biden. He's a Democrat, therefore he's guilty. Well, that brings us to the whole idea that they are taking impeachment to a level of ridiculousness, degrading it from the importance that it should have in our Constitution. They want to impeach Biden. They've already filed impeachment against Mayorkas. It's not going to go anywhere. But what do you think, Shannon, about that?
Well, the most recent information that I read that I thought was heartening is that the FBI informant has been found to be having lied to try to connect President Biden and Hunter Biden to the $5 million supposedly that was the bribery on the basis of which he could be impeached. Just time and time again, the issues supposedly supporting impeachment are based on quicksand. They're not really there. And getting back to creating or bringing about what I think Gregory was tremendous about, as often, is the for-profit media. Why do we even give a heck of a lot of time? Or, well, I guess we have to, in that Congress is giving the time to it, to all of these allegations about impeachment. They've been proven time and time again to not have any veracity to them. So why do we pay attention to them? I mean, Mayorkas was incredible to me again. The fact that they were even able to bring it up again, and knowing that the Senate will do nothing with it. Why waste the time? Where is the push from the American public to actually be dealing with the issues that affect them, such as the economy and whatnot?
Right. Well, Shannon, they're saying the same thing that they said when Hillary was running. We're going to do the Benghazi hearings, and I don't know how many they did, 10, 20 Benghazi hearings. Why? Because we hope it's going to weaken her for the election. Whether it's true or not, doesn't matter. Why are they doing the impeachments? We hope it's going to be on the minds of the voters that Biden is a crook and his son is a crook, and we're just going to keep banging that into the media. That's simple as that. It doesn't have to be true.
Well, also it allows them to spend a tremendous amount of time dealing with what they want to deal with, as opposed to what they should be dealing with, which is legislating and dealing with critical issues that we've already addressed today. Why aren't they addressing the aid that is critical to all of these foreign countries? Why are they dealing with impeachment when they should be dealing with the climate crisis? Why are they dealing with impeachment when they should be dealing with the infrastructure, the healthcare system, whatever else? It's a way to deflect, and also a way, as you just said, Sheila, to criticize Biden and to make it political instead of doing their jobs, which is legislating.
Right. And in terms of the media, we used to live in a world where we had a common understanding of what was happening, whether we watched Walter Cronkite or even read certain newspapers every day. But now, people that we're talking to right now, to each other, other people watching Fox and Newsmax, they don't even know what's going on other than the perception that they get from that media. People are living in silos, in bubbles, where they're not getting the information that it could be a common way to bring people together. Did you have your hand up, Greg?
All I just wanted to say, Sheila, is that there's another excellent term for that, which is
What?
we're living in an era of bespoke reality.
Ah,
Where basically people can create their own information reality, where they choose what channels and what venues to get their information from. And that's been a problem. As you say, there is no curator. There is no someone out there saying, no, that's too far fetched. That's too far on. That's also why I like the term for profit media rather than mainstream, because a lot of these shops are very small. They're just out there to push memes out, to push TikTok out, to push things out that will get them clicks, that will get them revenue. They have there is no long-term brand that they are trying to build for truth or accuracy or actually reporting anything. They just want advertising revenue. And however
Right.
they get it is how they choose.
All right, let's go on and see a few more of the slides of the cartoons. And now, House Republicans reveal, this is what you were talking about, Chad, their case against Hunter Biden, and there's nothing behind the curtain. Keep going. Same thing. Evidence President Biden received foreign government money. There's nothing there. Evidence President Trump received foreign government money. When they came up, the Senate did a study, and how many millions did he receive from foreign governments and foreign organizations that should have been prosecuted under the emoluments clause of the Constitution, which he has broken, right? Keep going. The economy's bad. The border's wide open. Our foreign policy is a joke. Biden keeps falling down, and they found cocaine in the White House. And what was it you said when Joe was elected? Oh yeah, the adults are back in the room. So this is the way the Republicans are going to fight against Biden. How are we going to fight back, Karen?
Well, I want to mention that I'm going to have to exit this in about 5 minutes. But so I think that the Democratic Party needs to get on the same page. I also think that as a group, we need to stop picking. We always find the fault. Well, Fani Willis, well, there's reasons for this. Well, and I think at some point, no matter whether you're in complete lockstep, there is a clear advantage of one candidate over the other. You cannot love everything he does, but he has a lot to show for it. And I think that the Democratic Party needs to start talking in lockstep and needs to stop criticizing. And I understand that the whole way the system works is you advocate on either on the extreme margins or on the end. At this moment in time, the danger here is too great. And I really do think people just need to start speaking in one voice and stop opening the door, because there is a group you can never convince you. We're not going to convince a whole swath of new people. What we need to do is make sure that people vote, that they understand the importance, people who would normally vote Democrat, who understand. And that, I think, is our job right now, however we do it. And I think the whole party needs to start doing it from our elected officials down.
All right, Karen, thank you. We're going to say goodbye to you now.
Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next time.
And Greg, did you have to leave as well?
In a few minutes. I've got a few more minutes.
Let's go through some of the other slides so that after you leave, Shannon and I can continue to chat. There's another way. Here are the Democrats painting a beautiful bouquet, and look what the Republicans are doing. It's like Trump saying he would love the economy to be bad and inflation to be high, and the stock market to go down just when election time comes along. He's hoping for the worst at election time. Keep going. The rift, a lot of people, and I hear this from some Democrats too, Shannon, are saying, we're going to vote for Biden, but yeah, what if we get Kamala? And I'm tired of hearing that. Kamala can rise to the occasions, and she, of course, is going to be 1,000 times better than having Trump in there. What say you to that?
Well, if the comparison is Trump, the alternative is always going to be much better. Just given what he's been saying about what he would do if he were elected. Scary. The comments he made about aligning with Putin as opposed to our UN allies and whatnot. What he intends to do. I just read this morning about the potential for him finally coming out again for a national abortion ban after I think it was 16 weeks or whatnot. All the things that he thinks he can do in basically what we're talking about before, for lack of a better term, a monarchy, getting back to putting the crown on his head, or an autocracy, or whatever, a fascist state. Incredible to me. And his supporters are going to do that. I mean, I agree with Karen. The number one thing we need to do is get people out to vote this November. We can't have them sit around and say, well, I don't really like the choice I'm given between Biden and Trump. I'm just not going to vote. Well, if you don't vote, then the choice is made.
Right. Let's go on. There's a couple of more slides along the similar lines. I'll take the wheel. Ha, 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 Biden. And there you go. There she goes. Next one. I think it's also about that. Yeah. What's utter incompetence and dreadful poll numbers? I have to be that bad to make you look so good. I mean, so obviously there is a mantra out there against Kamala Harris as vice president, and that she might have to take over should something
I
happen
think
to
that
Biden.
has to do with the age thing. I mean, it certainly is an issue that I don't think many people are talking about or thinking about. They're focusing on Biden's age, but not considering what happens should he die in office.
Yeah, no,
She would take over.
Right. And I've heard
Yeah.
people say that that is something that is making it hard for them to vote for Biden. And
Interesting.
We have to change that. And I'm thinking when Franklin Roosevelt went for his fourth election in 44, nobody knew or cared anything about Harry Truman. And everyone in the country knew, I am sure, that Roosevelt was very ill and probably would not make it to the end of his term. He barely made it for about 3-4 months after the election. And yet he was reelected. And we had that Quayle guy running as vice president and nobody wanted. And
well, that got a lot more press than
Bush
did
still
Kamala
won.
Harris.
Right. And Bush still
Kamala
won.
Harris is not getting a lot of in my circle or what I read. There's almost no mention of Kamala Harris.
Well,
Dan Quayle was certainly a drag on the ticket.
Well, Bush still won the first time. Clinton beat him the second time, but Bush Sr. still won. All right, let's go on with the slides. There's a couple more. Obama concerned about Biden. Yeah, I've been reading articles about Obama contacting Biden and talking about election strategy and so on. Keep going. Everybody's worried. Keep going. And from Trump, we got a clock. Okay, keep going because these are fun. Oh, now this is all about the primary. A lot of trouble just for second place. Yeah, keep going. This is all about the primary season. I love this one because I can't stand Christie. They all love him. Turn out the lights. The party's over. Christie 2024.
Well, that's the fat lady singing, right?
Exactly. And then this one, she's starting to talk a little better against Trump, but this was before she was putting on the cushy slippers for him, right? Put these on for Donald Trump. For DeSantis, I'll wear my stiletto heels. Well, we got rid of DeSantis. Go on. I think there's something about DeSantis coming up. There he is. I'm suspending my campaign. That's a good one. I spent 35 million in Iowa, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt. He was a bust. And one more. Joe Biden sure is persistent. Oh, okay. That's Israel. We'll get to that. All right. Any comments on the Republican non-primary or Nikki Haley? Does she have any shot in the next few months, or is it all done?
Well, I think
What do you
South
think?
Carolina is going to be the test, right? If she
Yeah.
can't even win in her own state after none of the candidates were preferable to her in, was it Nevada?
Yes.
Incredible to me. So South Carolina will be the bellwether, right, as to whether or not she can carry her own state.
Of course, yeah, she was governor of that state. And what's so amazing to me is that Tim Scott, who got out of the race and who was desperate to become Trump's vice president, do you know that he was made senator because of Nikki Haley? She was the governor who appointed him as senator when the position was open and while she was governor. And that's how he became senator. And now he is totally gone against her. And it's unbelievable how they dance to Trump's music. Unbelievable. All right, let's go on. And the next one. All right, this is Israel. I guess this is saying show restraint. Come on, man. Joe Biden sure is persistent. And what's the next slide? I think is about Netanyahu. You see, Prime Minister Netanyahu, frustration appears to be mounting between you and President Biden. What gives you that impression? Let's talk about that because, you know, we're getting to the point where President Biden has lost patience with what's happening in Israel. They're working on another, hopefully another ceasefire or pause to see if any hostages can be saved, if any are still alive. There's a belief that some of them may already have perished. Greg, what do you think of this at this point? And of course, Biden is having a tough time in his own party between people who are more sympathetic to the October 7th and think that, yes, Israel may be using a lot of force, but they have to get rid of Hamas. They cannot live that way. You cannot allow that to continue. And the more left wing of the party who feels it's too much and we need a ceasefire. What say you, Greg, about this?
We were actually discussing it before the show, and both Karen and I agreed that essentially, basically, you can keep the notion in your head that Hamas is a bunch of murderous thugs, and some of the Israeli actions are the actions of a bunch of murderous thugs. You know, that there is no reason that both sides cannot be at fault here. I think in terms of this particular cartoon, one of the things that I take from it is that what we're seeing is that the most effective way for foreign countries to win wars or to wage wars is to intervene in the politics of the United States. Whether it's Russia, whether it's Israel, whatever country it is, the easiest way to stop the United States from intervening on the side of your adversary or doing something that you don't like politically with regard to your country is to go after the United States Congress. And whether that's Netanyahu or Putin, it's amazing the return on investment they get from just putting a little bit of money and a little bit of effort into trying to affect U.S. politics. As far as Israel itself, I don't think there's a good solution. There just isn't. But the fact that that Hamas became into power by basically threatening, intimidating, eliminating anyone else who was a contestant for power in Gaza, and that Netanyahu essentially, in some ways, propped up Hamas because they presented him with an enemy that was never going to accept a two-state solution, which is the thing that he feared the most. I I almost want to say a pox on both their houses, but that's the leadership. It's the
Yeah,
people that are it's the people that are the victims, and it's on both sides. And it's really just disheartening to
right.
watch.
One of the political scientists that I read, Alan Dowdy, he's a professor. He says that we have to empower the moderates on either side, and they do exist, but they have to be empowered. And that Netanyahu will not survive this, and we'll see what the next government in Israel will do. They have to have an inquest, and he will be held responsible for a lot of what happened on October 7th. So we will see. But it is overall depressing, and as a Jew who would like Israel to survive as a democracy, as a free country, it is very discouraging, and I worry about that a lot. Let's go on to a couple more slides before we end our program. Oh, there he is, telling Mike Johnson, our House of Representatives Speaker, he's totally under the thumb of Trump. Keep going, there's more. I mean, really, there he is. Hey, nerd, tell me you're glad I'm back and give me your lunch money. The Republicans are in his grip big time. Uh, and now, the Freedom Caucus, uh, everything is on the floor. There's no legislation, and yeah, keep going. Yeah. They're when is the vote to get rid of Speaker Johnson going to happen? The way they got rid of McCarthy. I mean,
As soon as they pass another funding
as soon as
resolution,
they,
which they have to do in 2 weeks, the
right.
government's going to run out of money in 2 weeks,
Yeah,
and he just sent them on recess for 2 weeks. So
right. And he did it last time, because even he, as craven as he is, even he knows that he just can't let there be a government shutdown. But who knows what's going to happen in a couple of weeks.
Well, he got
Uh,
tremendous criticism for having done that too.
I know. Let's go on. There's a couple of oh, and now, of course, this is the
Mm.
whole immigration and border thing, and the Democrats walked right into it. You want aid to Ukraine, you want aid to Israel, you want aid to Taiwan. You better pass a tough border bill. And our own senator in Connecticut, Chris Murphy, spent hours and hours with that Langford guy from, is it Oklahoma? Right? James Langford from Oklahoma, very conservative. They worked together and came up with a bill that most Democrats really would not want for immigration, but they said, okay, give us the Ukraine aid, the Taiwan aid, the Israel aid, and we'll take it. And then what happened, right? Shannon,
Sheila,
what do
we
you?
are getting the message that we have to wrap it up.
Oh, okay. That's right. We have to start to wrap it up. All right. So, final thoughts, Shannon.
Well, I am very much looking forward to what happens in the cases versus Trump, and the results of that. That's certainly something that I don't know. As a lawyer, if we're going to see the rule of law, I'm also anxious to see what the Supreme Court does with regard to whether or not it's even going to take up the question of immunity, whether former President Trump has immunity. I don't think that they're going to take up the case, the grand certiorari on that. And even if they do, I don't think that they're going to make a decision as far as his immunity or not. They're going to punt that issue. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And hopefully we'll get together before elections in November. But we absolutely need to get across that all Democrats need to get, as Karen said, in lockstep behind Biden and Harris, and stop whining about any issue, or, as we want to do, criticizing what we don't like about it. And I'll hope to see you all before November so we can see what's transpired between now and then.
Okay, great. Great having you. And Greg, your final thoughts before we sign off.
I just want to make sure that we do not head down the road that a lot of Latin American countries did, where immunity becomes impunity, where essentially whatever decision is made and the cases that happen, that we make our political leaders more and more unsubject to the rule of law.
Right. Okay. Amen. Thank you both, political pundits. We'll see everybody next time on Talkback. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.